The Crotchety Old Men podcast is not a registered investment, legal, or tax advisor or a broker-dealer. All investment financial opinions expressed by or on the Crotchety Old Men podcast are from the personal research and experience of the owner of the site and are intended as educational material. Although best efforts are made to ensure that all information is accurate and up to date, occasionally unintended errors and misprints may occur. Before you invest or make any investment-based decisions, consider your own personal circumstances. You should do your own research and seek advice from a financial professional.
Happy New Year from the Crotchety Old Men podcast. This is your host, Gary Smith, co-host, I should say. And it's such a pleasure to see us in the 2023. Joining me in the studio today is my partner in crime, George Crumley. Top of the day to you, Crumbs.
Hey, Gary. Happy New Year to you also, man. It's been a great start to 2023. I know we kind of looked back on 2022 for a lot of different things and how successful we were with, launching this podcast. But, I am truly looking forward to 2023 and continuing to provide this information to all our loyal listeners about, financial freedom, financial security, and just how to grow yourself financially in 2023.
Absolutely. So what's our topic for today, George?
Well, Gary, people talk about, we often talk about, how to make money and, the different things to do. We've had guests on that talk about financial security and financial freedom. But one of the things you've also heard me always talk about is don't pay taxes or pay minimal taxes and try to avoid paying interest anywhere you can. But in retirement, it's really important that we talk about how to keep as much money as you possibly can. And what I mean by that is during retirement, or as we prepare for retirement, we think about our 401ks, our IRAs, our Roth IRAs, our Social Security. But we don't sometimes really examine how much of that is actually taxable and how much we're going to owe to Uncle Sam year in and year out. It's just, people just automatically think, when I'm retired, I'm older, I'm making less money, so I'll automatically pay less taxes. But that's not always true. So I'd like to explore that. Start off by talking about a book that I did read over the holidays. It's called The Concise Guide to Taxes in Retirement. It's by Bruce Larson, and I strongly recommend, if you're thinking about retirement, to grab this book. Even if you're not thinking about retirement, grab this book and take a read of it, because it gives you a lot of insight as far as how to maximize taxes during your retirement years. So that's what we're going to talk about today, Smitty.
Well, all right. It sounds like a plan, because and it's such an apropos, appropriate, I should say, topic, because starting off the year, people make these plans and goals. And what I'm hearing you say, George, is that fail to plan, your plan is to fail already. So let's get started. And I got a question also to lead us off, if you will, in terms of retirement. I know a lot of times we think in terms about Social Security and all our other programs and things that are available from jobs or what have you, savings accounts, 401ks. So my question, I guess, leading off would be, how important is it for our Social Security planning? Can you speak for a little bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Smitty. It's interesting enough. There are a multitude of ways that you can take your Social Security. And we just assume that once we get to 62, it's like, yippee, I'm 62, I can take my Social Security. But I don't think we sometimes examine the implications of taking their Social Security at 62. Your actual benefit is reduced 25% when you take it at 62. And what I mean by that is, for example, if at 62, you're entitled to, say, $1,982. So that's actually 75% of what you could receive at full retirement. Say full retirement was 65. So here again at 63, you would get 80%, which would be $2,114. At 64, you get 86%, which would be $2,291. And at 65, you get 93%, which is $2,465. So you can look at the amount of money you've left on the table by taking it at 62. Now, one of the things I want to point out is here again, you have to consider, your health at the time. Does it make sense to take the money at 62? So I'm not encouraging to do either one, but what I am doing is explaining the differences, because even though I've just explained the differences in the income in those different ages, 62 is the most popular age that most Americans take their Social Security.
Wow.
However, if you delay that Social Security until you're 70, you'll receive 132% of your full retirement. Now that's a big number.
That's significant. That's significant. Is Social Security, in far as the increase, what is it tied to? Is it tied to inflation? Does that vary per year? Because I know last year the Social Security payments were increased by about 8.7%, somewhere thereabouts. That was equal to where inflation was back in June. Now, as we both know, inflation changes from year to year. How does that impact the increase on Social Security?
Well, it's two things. If you don't take your Social Security, it grows at 8% every year. So
Wow.
that's how we get to the 132%. Okay,
Mm.
so the difference between taking it at 62 and 70. So if you don't take it, it's going to grow at 8%. So that's a heck of a percentage. There's not a lot of things that you can get a guaranteed 8%. So that's why it's almost encouraging to, if you can live on your other investments during your early retirement years, it benefits you to that extent that you can grow your Social Security. And here again, it takes in consideration your health, what you have in your 401k, your IRAs, and different other tools to live on, because everybody can't do that. But just to let you know, in the research that we've done and what they talk about in the book, there is a significant difference in taking your Social Security at 62 and age 70.
Wow. Damn, man, that's good stuff right there. So now, is Social Security is it completely tax free, or do we have to pay taxes on that at some point?
If the only means of income is Social Security, there is no taxes. However, if you have other means of income, then 85% of that Social Security will be added into your other means of income, meaning your 401k, your IRA, so that it goes in as ordinary income. You fall into the regular tax bracket, whichever tax bracket you would fall into, and then that's how your taxes. You use your regular deductions, that being your house interest
Mhm.
or whatever interest or other deductions you may have if you have a business. Obviously you reduce your taxes that way. But yeah, taxable.
Okay. Wow. Well, the tax man always have his hand somewhere in your pocket. And so, you know what we're about? We're about is trying to minimize that impact of the taxation. So, what I'm hearing you say, that if I'm thinking about retiring and I'm around that 62, but I have a side hustle, maybe I'm a or some sort where I'm making a little side money on the side. Is there any limit to that? How much money I can make before that tax come, or is it just automatically that it's going to impede upon my Social Security?
Well, no, it's going to be based on your age. It's going to be
Okay.
age based. Yeah. If you're retiring here again, so at age 62, you pull your Social Security,
Mm-hmm.
but you continue to work. There is a penalty based on, I think it's $1
Okay.
for every $2 that you make. There's a
Mm-hmm.
formula for that. And here again, Smitty, we're providing this information, and it's all for you to follow up on. Here again, we're
Right.
not tax advisors, we're
Right.
not financial advisors, but it's interesting enough that we've uncovered this information, and we want to share it with our audience. But by
Mm-hmm.
all means, every bit of information we give, we want you to go out and talk to your tax advisor. And I'm going to clarify something. There's three different types of individuals that deal with taxes. There's a
Mm-hmm.
tax preparer, there's a tax consultant, and there's a tax advisor. A tax preparer would be like your H&R Block. A tax consultant is someone that's going to help you plan for taxes. And then there's a tax accountant and tax advisor, which is going to, here again, help you in the future with how to move your money around and how to avoid paying overpaying in taxes and the different things that you can take advantage of based on your age. So here again,
Ooh.
at the end of the day, I want you to go back and research, get the right consultants, or get the right people around you to basically help you walk through these situations.
That's priceless, what you just said, because I'm thinking about so many people who rely upon either the H&R Blocks of the world, and I'm not knocking H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt at all or any of those, but those is what it sounds like to me are tax preparers.
Mhm.
And so the information that you're sharing today with our audience from this book, again, highly recommend you guys get this book. Hopefully get a library card, get it from there. But it sounds like a book that's worthy of the price to buy it and have in your library, because what I'm hearing is that there's potentially a lot of money being left on the table by not having that extra information, like you just said, that a tax advisor can provide. So many of us think sometimes, I know I did in the past, thought that a tax advisor was expensive, but that's relative to the information that you can get, because we're talking about a long-term planning here. Because once you say that you're going to retire, that means you're not going to work anymore, or at least you're retiring from the position that you have. Then I think, like right now, a lot of people are concerned about outliving their money. Okay. Okay. And that's a major concern, because I hear people and I see some friends and colleagues that I know that are still having to work in their later years. And so with this retirement, and particularly how Social Security plays in it, it sounds like there's a wealth of information that's in that book, man. And I know you just sharing just the tip of the iceberg with us. So continue.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I said, it's all about we always talk about how to save money and how to make money, but we don't often talk about how to keep money. Would you agree with that? Yeah, Smitty, for example, when people take their initial rollovers, so they get to that age where they want to actually roll over money from their 401k to another qualified plan, or like an IRA or a Roth. There's two ways to do it. There's a direct rollover and there's an indirect rollover. And people may not realize there's a difference. With a direct rollover, you send the funds directly to your new program, your new qualified plan. You never touch the money, and there's no tax implications. However, there's also an indirect rollover, and that's when you make the check out to your IRA account, but you have them send the check to you. So as long as you don't deposit it in your IRA account within 60 days, there's a non-taxable event. I'm sorry, as long as you deposit it in your IRA account within 60 days, this is a non-taxable event.
Okay.
However, when you do an indirect rollover, the IRS requires the 401k provider to withhold 20% of the rollover. Even though they forwarded the funds to you, they still require that, just in case you don't meet that 60-day time lapse and you don't roll it over fast enough. So once you get that 20% taken out, it's going to look like ordinary income, which means it's going to be taxable based on the tax bracket you're in. So the bottom line would be to do a direct rollover as opposed to an indirect rollover. What people may not realize, it really makes a difference.
Yeah, it sounds that way, because we both know if that money hits your bank account, it's spent. Okay. And so,
Exactly.
people are not accustomed to getting lump sum checks with six figures or what have you at times. And so, what that could cost you. And 20% is a large percent. So is that a penalty plus taxes or
No, there's no penalty
no?
because we're going to assume that you're over the age of 59 and a half.
Right.
So
Okay.
there's not going to be because if you do it, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. If you're if you're not 59 and a half, you're younger than 59 and a half, you can do a rollover to your account. Okay. However, there would be a penalty. Okay. There's a 10% penalty. And then if you do an indirect, then there's the tax implication on top of that.
I got you. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's good info, people. Hopefully you're taking notes.
definitely don't touch that money.
Don't touch it. Send that money. Act like you don't have it.
Exactly.
So how does that relate with the? Oh, I'm sorry. Is it?
Go ahead, Gary. Go ahead.
Because you said qualified plan. Now, is a Roth a qualified plan or a non-qualified plan?
It's a qualified plan.
Is it? Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's a qualified plan. However, when now you're talking about a conversion, because remember, Roth money is not taxed. Is taxed. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
IRA or regular IRA money is not taxed.
Okay.
So if you do a conversion from an IRA traditional to a Roth, you're going to have to pay the taxes when you roll it over. But once you get it into the Roth, it becomes non-taxable. So later on in life, it's not taxable. So for example, there's kind of three buckets. There's tax deferred, there's tax free, and there's taxable. So tax deferred would be like your 401k and your IRA. Your tax free would be like your Roth IRA. And then your taxable would be like a CD and a savings. So that's the difference.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So y'all see why you need to have a tax advisor,
right?
Not just a tax preparer. Man, this is good stuff, man.
Yeah.
This is good stuff.
One of the things that I'm going to shift to right now is required minimum distribution, or RMD. Okay. Most people are aware that when they turn 62, in the year that they turn 72, that they have to start taking RMD, or retired minimum distribution, from their IRAs and 401ks. Okay. You don't have to take it from your Roth. Okay. Roth is exempt from that. But what they may not realize is that the amount increases each year. For example, if you turn 72, the percentage is 3.91%. But by the time you reach 75, that RMD percentage is 4.37. So understanding this is your money, understanding that it's coming to you, but then also understand that how it affects you with any other monies that you're receiving, it's going to put you in a different tax bracket. Mm-hmm. So that's the implication there.
Okay. Yeah, that's you got to still, again, as we always say here on the Crotchety Old Men, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep.
Exactly.
So, with proper planning, you can certainly minimize or reduce significantly the amount that's taken away from you. Because certainly when we get in the age of 72, 75, man, we want to enjoy life. All right. And to that degree, if you don't plan for it, I think I said it early on, you're planning to fail. Now, George, let me ask you a question too. Now, did the book address or anything as maybe annuities or how life insurance? Have we have money in a life insurance policy and stuff like that? Is that? I understand that's not taxable, but how do we incorporate that into our retirement plan?
Interesting. That's interesting that you asked that question. And I wanted to say one more thing about the RMD for those that think that they don't have to pay it. If you don't take your RMDs, it's a 50% tax hit from the IRS. So
what?
If you're thinking about, I ain't got to do that, I'm not going to do that, IRS will come looking for you. Okay. So just to make sure.
50%?
Yep.
Man. Yeah, that's yeah, ouch. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. So, but the question becomes, how do I reduce my taxes, when I receive my RMD? And here again, that's why you want to consult a tax advisor or a tax consultant, because there are ways that you can do it by doing a Roth 401k to Roth IRA conversion, which is kind of like pay the taxes up front, and therefore you don't have to pay it on the back end. So those are, that's one way to minimize it. There's other ways, but those are kind of things that you want to investigate. But and like I said, the bottom line is to consult a tax advisor, not a tax preparer. So that's the bottom line
Absolutely.
on that. But shifting gears, yeah. When you talk about life insurance and you say annuities,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what you got outside.
Um,
Yep.
Here again, there's a couple things that you can do. We've talked about kind of some of this in previous episodes. Life insurance um, can garnish uh, what we call cash value. So as long as it's not a term policy, as we know, term policy is,
Right.
is for a particular term. But a whole life and a variable life policies accumulate cash value. So any monies that you withdraw from your life insurance program reduces the face amount if you take it as a loan or if you take it with withdrawal. If you take it as a
Right.
loan, you can pay it back and it doesn't affect the face value. And when you
Hmm.
take that money out, yes, it's tax free. So it's your
Hmm.
money. Same
Okay.
thing if you take a withdrawal, it's going to automatically, so that if you take a withdrawal, you're saying automatically you're not going to pay it back. So it's going to automatically reduce the face amount. For example, if you got a $150,000 policy, you take out 20,000, you say you're not going to pay it back. They reduce the face amount of your policy to 130,000, and therefore you don't have to pay it back, and it's tax free.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a good thing. You can do that.
All
Annuities depends. It depends on what kind of annuity it is. So there again, you want to investigate the different types of annuities to see which one would benefit you. But overall, most annuities you are gonna it will fall in the bracket of ordinary income.
right. This is so good because I'm sitting here thinking that for African Americans and so many of us who don't have access to this type of advice, advisory, and guidance and things like that, this book seems to be even more imperative to have in your library or what have you, because it gives you ideas and solidly it gives you step by step approaches, whereas that unknowingly we don't put ourselves in a position of having to pay a large tax bill. And so I think about people who have already gone beyond this. I don't know if it's too late or not, George, but I'm praying that it's never too late. And for a person to gain the knowledge, whereas not to place themselves unknowingly sending the government money that they desperate, I should say desperate, but certainly could use, you know, for that enjoyment, for those vacations and things like that. And so this planning, this information, man, is it's helped me just here on this podcast because I've been taking notes.
Well, interesting enough, Gary, you talk about people that are already in retirement. So if you're already in retirement, one of the things you may be thinking about is inheritance. Okay.
Mm,
So, it's an unfortunate thing, but one of these days we're going to leave this earth and we're going to hopefully leave some type of legacy for our children. But we got to make sure we're leaving what we think we're leaving. So let me
right.
talk about inherited IRAs. Okay,
Okay.
so the most common error is people think that if they inherit money in an IRA and they are under the age of 72, remember we talked about the RMD.
Hmm.
So they would think that if they're under the age of 72, that RMD doesn't affect them. However, it does. There was an act filed, and I'm not sure what year it was. It's called the Secure Act, which basically changed. It was passed and I believe it was March of last year. I said I didn't. I think it was March of last year. But it did. The good thing is it changed the years for the RMD. So, for example, um, RMD went from 70 and a half to 72. So now in 2022, it's 73. Starting in 2029, it'll be 74, and in 2032, it'll be 74. So it does kind of float the RMD age. But what it also did was it says that 10 years from the date of the death of the original owner of the IRA, the account must be emptied. If not, the IRS will pocket a 50% tax on what remains. So, what that means is if you inherit some money in an IRA from your parents and you just leave it in an IRA, You've got to take it out in 10 years. If you don't, they're going to take 50% of it. Because it used to
Wow.
be, it used to be you had to use it the year preceding the death. You had to start
Mm.
taking the distributions, but they did change it that way.
Mm.
There are also spousal beneficiary rules that we have to be aware of also. And that depends on if the surviving spouse is over 59 or under 59. And here again, I advise you to check with your tax advisor to see where those are, because we just think automatically I pass away, my spouse just gets everything is just keeps rolling the way it is. But it's not always the case. So for example, um, the age of most, and I'll say children, uh, dependents, beneficiaries, inherit IRAs from their parents is typically between the age of 50 and 60. This also corresponds with their maximum earning years. So if a beneficiary, a child, receives a sizable taxable asset when they are in the highest lifetime tax bracket, it can often make sense for these parents to convert their IRAs to a Roth account to have their children pay taxes on those. This will also um, allow the children to inherit it tax free. What this means is if they're in the highest tax bracket between the ages of 50 and so their highest earning years, and they get a big inheritance, then that's going to drop into their bucket and they're going to owe a lot of taxes because of the fact that they've now shifted into a larger tax bracket. So here again, if what you can do is convert um, the IRA money into a Roth IRA money, and then have the children or beneficiaries pay the taxes at that time. So that way it can continue to grow in a non-taxable form. So they will actually make more money.
Now that's smart. Now that's what you
Yeah.
call planning. Okay. Proper preparation prevents a poor retirement. Put it that way. Dang, my goodness. Before we wrap up, George, what other nuggets can you give us about this retirement thing? Because it's beginning to sound like we may have to do a second segment on this at some point now.
Yeah, I mean, we may have to, Smitty, because there was so many nuggets in this book that, like you said, you learn, I learned, because there's things that I may have done differently in retiring. There may have been a different age I would have retired at if I had realized some of these tax implications. Just the one that we talked about initially, as far as the difference in retiring at 62 and 72. 134% increase. I mean, that in itself makes you think, should I wait before I take my Social Security? But what I want to emphasize is the things that we're talking about are not for all. For example, when you take your Social Security, it's different than when everybody's is different. Everybody's situation is different. The book uses an interesting example. There was a couple that they had a decent amount of Social Security. They had a small 401k, but they also had a house that was paid for. So after they consulted their tax advisor, it made more sense for them to wait until that age of 72 to take their Social Security and the money that they would live on, because they didn't necessarily want to pass the house on to their children, is they did what they call a reverse mortgage. So here again, they used the reverse money from the reverse mortgage to live on until the Social Security kicked in. So here again is another creative way to use different types of funds to get to the same goal, which is having, like you say, the maximum amount during your retirement years. So, those folks that are sitting, they people say, I want to pay off my house, in retirement, so I won't have that note. But what you don't realize is that you're sitting on all this equity. And the equity, you can't take to the bank and buy groceries with equity. So it's not always a great thing to do to have a house that's paid off and worth $500,000. I mean, what good is that doing? So those are kind of things that you really have to consider. during your planning process for retirement.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, man. I've been telling people, advising about reverse mortgages for years. There's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. A lot of people that take the reverse mortgage and they go on a trip to Europe or somewhere. Nothing wrong with that if you plan for that trip. But more importantly, man, as I'm hearing you say, heck, that money could be rolled over into a Roth, couldn't it?
Well, I don't know if you would want to roll it over
to that or no. Would you want to do that or maybe not?
Well, think about it. If you roll it over to a Roth, you got to wait 5 years before you can use it.
Oh, well, no, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, you have the elimination program, but check this out. Yeah, but check this out. So if you do a reverse mortgage, you can basically divide that money up. Say, for example, you need $60,000 a year, and like I said, you got a small 401k. So you can take the Roth. The adjustable interest. You can take the money that you receive from the reverse mortgage, couple it with the money that you're receiving from your 401k or your pension, letting your Social Security grow at 8% until you reach that ripe old age of 72, and still live in the house and make no payments. So that would be the advantage of it. Okay.
Yeah, it makes me think of this. Now, one of my strategies would be is to take that reverse mortgage and turn around and lend it out. Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. Exactly. If you don't have anything to do with it and you're already comfortable within, because it's non-taxable money, because
exactly.
Technically it's a loan.
And you create an income for yourself, a passive income stream for yourself at a double-digit interest, something that you're not going to get in the bank. And so, well, that's another segment that we can talk about. But
and obviously there's a lot of things that go involved, because with a reverse mortgage, like say when the last survivor leaves the house, and the house automatically defaults back to the mortgage company or the lien holder. So those are the things that you have to consider. But there's a lot of different things you can do. Like you said earlier, if you don't really need the money, you can put it into some type of bond or some type of interest growth account and grow that, and still leave a legacy for your children based on the amount of growth that reversible mortgage money will earn, over the number of years that it sits there. So there's a lot of creative things that you can do. But here again, tax advisors, tax planners will help you walk you through this. We're here just to provide, this general information, which is so important in planning for retirement. Like I said, planning for retirement just doesn't mean I've reached this ripe old age and I'm going to sit back and get my Social Security. I'm going to plop in some 401k money or pension money, and everything's going to be happy. Uncle Sam's always going to have his hand out for the money. Yeah, okay, so that's, it's about, like you said, Smitty, it's not about what you make, it's about what you keep and what you're able to spend.
Well, all right, George. Well, hey, it looks like it's come to that time where we may have to, say bye-bye. But no, as we wrap up, this has been so great. I hope our listeners have taken this information, George, that you've shared with us. We're talking facts here, ladies and gentlemen, not fiction. You can find us, on the Crotchety Old Men podcast. If you missed the original recording, make sure you go back to your thing. I want to pass it back to George because I know he's got some other words of wisdom pertaining to this that he wants to share with us. But keep us in mind, Crotchety Old Men podcast. George?
Make sure that people understand, get this book. It's called The Concise Guide to Taxes and Retirement by Bruce Larson. It's a great book. It's a great read. Has a lot of good information in it. And, like you said, Smitty, one of the things that I'm looking at in this year, 2023 is, we get three choices in life. We can either give in, we can either give up, or we can give it all we got. And I'm trying to give it all I got. That's what I'm trying to do and pass it on. So, that's what it is for me.
I love that right there. Y'all hear that? You can either give in, give up, or give it all you got. So if you didn't know, now you know.
All right. Take care.
Peace.
This is Dr. Paul Clemens with the Crotchety Old Men podcast. If you're interested in financial tools to build wealth, and you're interested in ways to maximize your health through holistic alternatives, then you are just the audience that we're looking for. Tune in each week, every Thursday, to the Crotchety Old Men podcast, where George Crumley, Gary Smith, and I offer you in-depth discussions on health and wealth. Subscribe to the Crotchety Old Men podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your favorite podcast.